turned FSB into modern day Gestapo.
There's no religious freedom right now.
The Russian anti-cult network.
Who really doesn't care about God at all.
So today we're going to continue the discussion of international agents of totalitarian regimes and the way they undermine in democracy, the way they provoke hatred. And initially, it starts from smear campaigns, from using cult narratives to anti-cult narratives, to recruit agents in the media and then operate this network. And in this regard, the whole prosecution of AllatRa, International Public Movement, and Creative Society is a very vivid example of their attacks. The attacks started against AllatRa on the website of Russian Ratsir, so Russian anti-cult department. And the way it went, first, this Ratsir's organization, which is anti-cult department of a Russian Orthodox Church under the leadership of Alexander Dworkin, a bizarre character. We spoke a lot about him on our previous episodes. He initiated this campaign against AllatRa International Public Movement, dehumanizing participants as agents of Western cults, of American intelligence, of Ukrainian intelligence, smearing it as SBU Sect to prosecute people in Russia. Eventually, it took them years to organize campaigns in the media. Year after year, they were amplifying this message, and whatever was published on the Ratsir's website was multiplied in news outlets, which they could, bribe, because at first it was very hard for them to push the narratives. It's illegal to smear somebody like that. And eventually they demonized AllatRa participants in Russia and then went to the next stage to ban the movement AllatRa
So
in Russia.
they started in Russia, but I'm saying so in Ukraine, a particular article about the SBU infiltrating and carrying out raids against members of AllatRa in the coordination center. While this was happening, plenty of articles around the world were calling AllatRa a pro-Putin sect, pro-Ukrainian sect, a pro-USA sect. And so they created this dissonance for people. Meanwhile, as you were saying, what happened in Russia, Tali? Please share in detail what happened in Russia and how that led to what we're going to talk about in Slovakia with the actions of the journalists, the prosecuting attorneys, and yes, and we'll go from there.
So right now there is a massive prosecution of AllatRa participants and massive campaign organized by anti-cultists against AllatRa in Slovakia and Czech Republic. But it's important to understand something you're not going to find in their articles is the story of what is happening in Russia, of prosecutions
Absolutely.
and effectively genocide that was organized by Russian anti-cult movement under ROC leadership under Ratsirs and Alexander Dworkin against AllatRa in Russia. And again, the script works the same way. First, the anti-cultists publish articles on their websites, then their network of journalists amplifies this message, and then they reaching out to politicians to bring up the message based on these smearing lying articles with no concrete evidence, with no evidence at all, with no crimes committed. They push in to for law enforcement to take action against innocent people because some anti-cult gang created a narrative demonizing this group of people. And once again, AllatRa is just a convenient target for them to expand the network of agents because through such media campaigns, they recruit agents worldwide. So if they have organization that is working domestically in Russia, they can expand the network there. AllatRa is a convenient target because it has participants in 180 countries, and they
That's
can
right.
expand.
And we did not have support of the establishment, which was a key point for them to utilize the movement as their target.
Well, they expanded their network, and we discussed this in previous how
Hmm.
the episodes, how they established a network of agents in Ukraine, and they started publishing the very same articles in Ukrainian press. First, on the anti-cult websites of Ratsir's agents in Ukraine, so-called Apologetic Center of Ukraine, named it exactly as the Nazi Apologetic Center led by Walter Kunet. Apparently, they're not hiding the connection over there. and the usage of same methodology. For Ukrainian audience, the only thing they changed is that instead of smearing AllatRa as American and Ukrainian cult, they changed it to Putin's worshiping cult, which is a
Yeah,
bizarre
pro-Putin
statement.
sect. Yeah, yep, absolutely.
It's bizarre because anyone who have seen materials on AllatRa.org or AllatRa TV, AllatRa has never supported any political
I've never
powers.
seen a picture of him in anyone's room, nor have I seen a picture of Donald Trump or anybody. So
It's a key point in AllatRa organization that it stays outside of politics and outside of the religion. But Ratsir smeared AllatRa as pro-Putin's cult in Ukraine for local audience as pro-Ukrainian and pro-American cult in Russia for Russian audience. And by the way, they are smearing not just religious organizations, but multiple commercial organizations, yoga studios, barber shops, uh, attorney attorneys and uh, anything you name it. It's a convenient tool to take over somebody's business. It's a convenient tool to get rid of the competition in the religious field, competitors with the Russian Orthodox Church.
it's
And
fair to say that they're going after anyone and everyone who isn't under the control of the anti-cult organizations.
Absolutely. And eventually in Ukraine, they did the very same thing. They demonized AllatRa, and then they demonized those who were, politicians who were not convenient for them. So they have an agenda. And again, as Surkov leaks showed, that Kremlin is curating this agenda, right? Surkov, Diveevo Brotherhood, or Diveevo Order, the Trench Brotherhood of Diveevo Monastery, led by Kirienko currently, they are curating this network and they push on their narratives. And when they want to demonize certain politicians, eventually they use in this network to smear certain politicians in certain countries and put dirt on them using the organizations they already smeared, such as they did to AllatRa, demonized. Called it pro-Putins, and then said, "Look at this politician, look at that politician." They made an interview on AllatRa TV, and nobody cared that interview was pro-Ukrainian, that it was very patriotic. Nobody dived in the essence of it. They simply destroyed political figures that way. So the creation of this network and the way that it operates, and currently through the network of anti-cultism, they operate in the US, in European Union, in Czech Republic, in Slovakia. And they started a mass campaign in Slovakia and in Czech Republic. And, hundreds of articles were published within past couple of weeks in multiple countries of European Union and in the US, demonizing AllatRa, basically copy-pasting the propaganda from Ratsir's website using the
Mhm.
narrative they used in Ukraine, that it's a pro-Putin's apocalyptic sect.
So let me get this right. After they carried out this ideological warfare against us in Ukraine, then they began to implement that persecution in Russia. That's correct?
Absolutely. Once they go to the political level, so first smearing campaign, then politicians making requests to law enforcement to prosecute certain organizations, and then illegal, attacks by they have agents recruited in departments of law enforcement. They had a decades long campaign to turn the departments of law enforcement who supposed to fight extremism and terrorism to turn them into anti-cult departments. They had, there are pictures of them uh, on these rallies with all the officials, representatives of police, and so on, basically pushing the agenda of fighting cults. And they check in how's the thing with fighting cults in your region, right? When they travel in and making their bizarre rallies. So they used the very same method after applying it in Russia through their network in Ukraine. And now they created the same attack in Slovakia and Czech Republic and expanded it to other countries in Europe and even the US. And when we look what triggered them, well, it was investigation that was started by the prosecutor in Slovakia against this network. And the investigation was going against organized criminal group that is directed and at the undermining human freedoms, democracy in Europe. And this is being done a week after PACE, Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe, recognized Russian Orthodox Church as instrument of disinformation and propaganda. So the prosecutor is operating absolutely legally and doing exactly what is demanded by resolution of PACE to fight agents of Russian propaganda, including in journalism field. So if you are journalists and anti-cult activists who belong to Russian Red Series network in Europe were interrogated. And what happened afterwards? A massive smear campaign in the media. They launched hundreds of articles within a few days, basically highlighting all the network, showing up all the agents, even the ones who were sleeping cells, even in the places where nobody knew they have agents. All this network, but it was organized network. It was the very same people. If you look at the leadership of these newspapers and radio stations and internet portals, those are not random people. Those are journalists who belong to the very same network connected to anti-cult agenda, who are operating within this narrative of anti-cultism, and they copy-pasted paragraphs from Ratsir's articles from Russian websites. Exactly like it was done previously with a smearing article in BBC, where Chelyabinsk Diocese of Russian Orthodox Church, specifically its anti-cult department, was cited as the trustable source of information about AllatRa. You know, when it was published in BBC, it clearly shows how far their tentacles reach. And what they did not publish in that article is that BBC has an anti-cult expert who is writing articles and who is often on their podcasts and in their articles as a main anti-cult expert. Alexandra Stein, who is best buddies with Alexander Dworkin, who participated in Fakhry's organization under a leadership where Dworkin was vice president. So he used these connections to publish this article and also multiple articles on BBC praising Alexander Dworkin, this bizarre characters who bans yoga in Russia, and for that BBC praising him. That's a quite odd coincidence. So this network is being investigated by a prosecutor in Slovakia. And what happens? The prosecutor is being smeared as a cultist in their articles.
And how did
The
they achieve that? In Russia, in the Chelyabinsk region, they carried out a prosecution against a participant for simply sharing informational material. And they went after the person basically for a version of proselytizing, right? Without the approval of the Orthodox uh, oligarchs, okay? And once they were successful with that and had to close down, then they carried out more operations in Slovakia. But simultaneously, what they don't want people to know about is how they're kicking in doors and they're taking participants out of their homes. And they're
Absolutely.
prosecuting people the same way they did with Jehovah Witnesses. And if I recall correctly, 6 counts to 1 for each indictment against what Russia is doing, basically saying that what they did against Jehovah Witnesses was absolutely wrong and that there's no religious freedom right now in Russia as a result of the anti-cult movement, who really doesn't care about God at all.
Yes, in 2020, there was a report on religious freedoms by the US Commission on the Religious Freedom, which declared and basically deep dived into the activities of Alexander Dworkin. And it's a great analytical work which shows how exactly he suppressed all religious freedom through the work of anti-cult network in Russia. It's called the Anti-Cult Movement and Religious Regulations in Russia and former Soviet Union, the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom. So it's it's a great source of information on this movement.
Absolutely.
Right now, we're seeing that during the attack, during that media campaign, what people will read in these articles is a extreme demonization of AllatRa. It's called pro-Putin sect, apocalyptic cult, and so on. But what you're not gonna find is that at the very same time in Russia, people's doors are knocked out, people are thrown to jail, separated with their families. And there is basically an ongoing genocide of AllatRa participants. And I would say former AllatRa participants, because there is no participation and no activities of AllatRa
That's
International
right.
Public Movement in Russia since August 8, 2023, when Russia officially declared AllatRa
And
undesirable.
undesirable. That's right. Per their that
And
Yerovov law, right? How do you pronounce her name?
yeah, Yarovaya law. So and again, what is declared for undesirable? Let's take a look at the article. It says clearly for receiving commands from Ukrainian curators, for being agents of Ukrainian and Western and American intelligence, and so on. And this is something you're not going to find in the smearing articles published against AllatRa in European Union right now by the same network of Russian Ratsirs, the Russian anti-cult network. What you're gonna find is them denying that such network exists, saying that, it's a myth. Nothing exists. Well, take a look at Zdunek Wojciechek, where he was studying. Take a look how he praises Johannes Ogert, the teacher of Alexander Dworkin. Take a look at his participation in the anti-cult activities, and take a look at the same Luigi Carvalho, what he was publishing, how he hugging with Alexander Dworkin on the pictures, participates in their activities. Take a look at travel history of Stephen Hassan and his participation on the round tables in the factories alongside with Alexander Dworkin and so on. And you will come to concrete facts. There is concrete evidence. And all these people have been trained by Johannes Ogert and Fritz Hug, who are students of legitimate Nazi, of a real Nazi.
Nazi ideologies.
Yes, of Walter Kunet, who organized Apologetic Center in Nazi Germany and participated in organization of dehumanization campaign of Jewish population of Germany and multiple religious minorities, sending them to concentration camps. And he was basically given orders how to prosecute them, even, to the details, as all the raids have to be done in one day from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. And then take a look what happened in Russia. They did over 70 searches in one day, executing them from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Is it just coincidence, or is it that they are following the direct methodology and direct orders of Nazi Germans, of Walter Kunet, and the way he was, instructing Gestapo to operate? And now, effectively, this network of Russian Ratsirs agents turned FSB into modern day Gestapo, prosecuting Russian people. You know what? This is tough, and I think
So
this
yeah.
worth.
So since there's no such thing as coincidences, people just don't take enough time to study the who has the motivation behind the why. What happened with the journalist that was being prosecuted in Slovakia, and why were they afraid of what would happen as a result of that investigation?
They were afraid and terrified because by the way they reacted, you can tell they were terrified that the whole network is going to get exposed. And by counteracting it with their smear flash mob, they basically exposed all their network. But they were able to smear and incite enough fear in Attorney General that they're gonna start a massive campaign against the Attorney General of Slovakia, that they pushed Attorney General to shut down the case.
Makes
But
sense.
yet they exposed the whole network. And what is so what was so scary about this investigation and about interrogation if they have nothing to hide, if they commit no crimes? What was the cause to incite such a huge campaign and such a hate propaganda against AllatRa and against the prosecutor that people in the comments, when I was reading articles, I'm seeing comments, and people in comments says that the only way to deal with it is to shoot the prosecutor and AllatRa participants.
They were
And
showing
this is
intent to commit bodily harm to individuals and raising that narrative and further constructing that narrative across media sources, thus
exactly.
changing the informational ecology within the country of Slovakia.
And there is a huge amount of participants of AllatRa who are Slovaks and Czech Republic residents, and were born and raised there, and they're part of the society. So what effectively they do? They turn one part of society against other part of society, declaring somebody as subhumans, inciting that much hatred that it leads to assassination attempts. And we know this was done by their agents in Russia, in Ukraine. There were multiple assassination attempts against AllatRa participants, and now they're trying to do the same in Slovakia. And right away, they use it for political reasons. Right away, in the very same articles, they start drawing connections to the political parties that AllatRa have nothing to do with. But again, why they demonize an AllatRa? For a
Because they
much
cherry pick
bigger
information so that they can begin persecuting.
so they can use it for geopolitical reasons, and so they can smear politicians who are inconvenient for them and take over the political party. And I think this is something we should discuss in our next episode, folks. As for now, thank you for watching us. Once again, guys, subscribe to this channel, write in the comment section below your thoughts, and share this information with everyone, because this directly affects freedom in your country, whether it's US, whether it's European Union. If people not gonna know about this information, they will be subject to manipulation. But knowing this information will lead them to do their own investigation to verify the facts, go to the very same AllatRa website and see what these people are all about. See that they are the most peaceful organization that has always been standing for human rights, freedom, and was
Absolutely.
trying to convey information about climate, presenting graphs from the most well-known and respected universities in the US, in Europe, and all over the world, paying attention to the facts of threat of a climate change and trying to unify scientists. Again, what they smear in AllatRa in their articles, they say they were that AllatRa wanted to invite more participants, or was calling bad names, or even animals. They say those who are not in AllatRa, which is complete nonsense, manipulation with facts, and this is the way they twist and everything. AllatRa was never trying to recruit any people, or was never inviting anyone to join. The in message was to join to join sharing the information about climate, and to make a request for unification of scientists, to create a unified scientific center where professionals who can deal with climate would address it, not the AllatRa participants. We are not the ones to address it. And this is the key point. And this is how they twist everything. This is how they demonize. That's why, folks, it's important to turn on critical thinking. Do not trust the things. And they are masters of manipulation. You can say that thing after reading their articles. You clearly see how they turn in people into hating AllatRa, hating certain politicians they demonize, and so on. So let's discuss it in our episode. And thank you guys for watching us.